I'm Andrew Kubera, and I'm here to talk about writing Kodi plugins with Python. For those who don't know, and how many know Kodi and are familiar with it already? Yeah, a little bit, okay. So we don't need to get into it too much for time. But for those who don't know, Kodi's a cross-platform media center, which is designed to play music and movies on 10-foot user interfaces like your television. It is very cross-platform, so you can just run it as an application on any of these systems. And every time Kodi is explained, we're required to say that its origin is the Xbox Media Center, and this was a project from 2002 adding set-top box functionality to the original Xbox. This really doesn't matter to us, except that all the imports start with XBMC, and that's why. It looks, oh, all right, I'm sorry, was I one behind? Okay, yeah, right, yeah, so XBMC, there you go. Okay, this is the default theme. This is what it looks like. You can play music and movies, so you know there's some music and looks good on TV. Technically, it's implemented in C++, but it features a plugin system that is extendable with Python, and that's the subject of this talk. A brief, basic introduction to get you started writing applications for your TV. I'm not affiliated with the project. I'm just a user who wanted to do more Python on my TV. But before I do that, I'd like to tell you about my journey figuring out this ecosystem from the hardware to Python. And that starts with this box. And you might have this box. It's a box full of single-board computers, aka the box of false hopes, or maybe broken dreams. Yeah, you know this, but no, it's, there we go, unrealized potential, yes. So some of these I bought, some of them were gifts, all of them were sitting there doing nothing. And one day I just went, I want to pull one out and make it a media center PC. What are my options? So I grabbed the Radza Rock 4. These are the specs we don't have to get into, but I did like it because it has an M.2 eMMC, or not NVMe connector, so I can put more storage on it than typical. And but I needed to buy the extender board, and there's also a big heatsink that you can buy for it. But it's small. It's just right. It's like a Raspberry Pi sized, one of these little guys. And it only uses about 4 watts of power as it's on, like between 4 and 6. And as an aside, getting one of these power meters for your USB, if you charge anything with USB, I recommend getting one of these. Power meters are pretty handy to know what your voltage is. So this one supports 9, so that's neat. So that's the hardware. Don't need to get into it. Just use whatever you have on hand. You know, it's 4 gigabytes, not particularly beefy. It's just playing movies. But the next problem is, what software do I run? Obviously, I ended with Kodi, but I did spend a weekend just flashing images onto SD cards and like trying to install Android TV and some other systems. I remember Android being a little slow, so that might just be a board mismatch. Not saying that it's a bad platform, but I also liked that Kodi was as extendable as possible, really, because you can just write your own Python and copy it over. But we'll get to that. Still, you need to know what operating system you're using, and I landed on LibreElec, which has the tagline, just enough OS for Kodi, and that is very true. That's what the elec stands for. And I really like how many boards this distro supports. So there's the Raspberry Pis, and there's the Rock chip boards, and that's the one I have, but they also have the all-winner one, so there's your Orange Pis and some other, V-Link boards, and also the Amlogic boards, so there's Odroids and Catus and more, and it's just so nice to have a project that you don't have to second guess which architecture you need to install for this particular board. Like, they're very, very clear on that, so good for them. But there were some things I didn't realize when I selected this. It's not what you would call, or what I would call, a typical distribution. Root is mounted as a squash, or root is a squashfs image that's mounted on runtime. So it's a read-only file system. Means you can't So you can't like install files to user bin, that kind of thing, where you want to modify your system. Can't do it. But you do have a mutable storage partition that that's where you can put media. And the Kodi specific files are in storage.kodi. So that's good to know. And there's no package manager outside of Kodi. So there's no apt or pacman or anything like that because it's a read-only file system. What could they do? So that's strange that I didn't realize when I selected it. All the system updates are through the Kodi menu system. Everything runs as root. There's really only one user. So every plugin that you install with LibreElec, like you're running Python as root, which it's a read-only root file system, so not too bad, but still, if you don't realize that everything has access to everything, it's kind of surprising. And that's LibreElec, not Kodi. Don't think that Kodi requires root. Also, there's no rsync, so if you're trying to rsync files into it, there's no other background process on the other side that you can copy. But it does have SSH if you enable it through the Kodi menu system, where secure copy still works, so you can remote add your files remotely, if need be. But despite all that weirdness, everything still works. It boots quickly, boots right into the Kodi UI, turns on when the TV turns on, or turns on the TV when it's turned on. Remote controls work, USB DVD player works, and I don't know how easy it would be to set up something like Arch or Debian to get that kind of functionality. Like that'd be extra time, but you do get extra features if you just wanted this to be a server that you're running and install all kinds of other stuff, because you're not installing anything else unless it's via Kodi plugins, which, hey, that's what this talk is for, right? Okay, so yeah, no nonsense system unless the root thing is nonsense. Okay, so that was the platform, that was operating system. Now let's talk Kodi. So some things I wish someone had told me right away. Escape takes you to the main menu, and backspace takes you back. And there's a lot of times I was in a menu that I wish, or like I hit escape thinking I would leave the menu, but I was just going into different menus. So that was frustrating. But yeah, get trained on backspace is back. S is the power menu, so if you want to shut down and exit, that's a really quick, good shortcut to know. Context menu, so kind of like right-clicking is M, and subtitles sometimes randomly turn on. Know that it's T to toggle them off. Okay, also, if you have a menu up when you're watching something, to remove it, it is that button. I didn't realize it, and it was like really frustrating to like quit everything. Just like shut it down, reboot, and go back to where I was. Also tab. Okay. All right, so now let's get more into the code. So when you launch Kodi, like all of Kodi's runtime data, or at least the non-system runtime data, is stored in the Kodi data directory, which is set either via the environment variable there or defaults to home.kodi, at least on Linux. I'm not sure how the files get distributed on the others. Like it's /library on Mac, you know this. Okay, at least that's true on Linux. So inside that directory, you find add-ons, the media, your preferences, and this temp directory. Temp directory is important because that's where your log is. So if you're doing development, print doesn't work. You don't, as far as I can tell, you don't get any access to standard out. But you do get a log function, and log will write to this log file. So I personally like to use tailf and pipe it to bat in logging form, and that gives you a nice colorized trailing like log. You could also run it with, just run Kodi with logging to console. That's all monochrome, but you know that's fine too. So if you want, if you like the colors, go with bat. All right, and now finally let's talk about add-ons. So every extension to Kodi is an add-on. That includes skins, screensavers, games, UI sounds, which I didn't realize until I was doing this talk. Like, oh, I'm like, we're kind of like Pokemon noises or Age of Empires 2, I think I want like kind of UI sounds. But that's not what this talk is on. So let's see, add-on repositories, as in the thing you install add-ons from, like the list of add-ons are themselves add-ons. Python packages, if you want to install Python packages, those have to be installed as add-ons to Kodi. And our focus today is on media sources, which provide media for Kodi to play. So that's video, music, images. Your primary resource for add-on development is the Kodi wiki. It's pretty good. Some of the information is outdated. And sometimes when I was starting out, I found it hard to find things, despite it being obviously well organized. Like it's pretty good, but some links didn't take me to where I expected to go. And by outdated, I mean it still references Python 2 code in spots that the functions don't exist anymore. There's print as a statement. And that's unfortunate because I bet there's a bunch of people out there who want to get interested. It's like, oh, I heard Python's really easy to learn. And then they follow the tutorial, and then the tutorial is throwing errors saying, I can't print. And you're like, ugh. So they give up. But I'm sure they'll appreciate your help if you want to, like it's a wiki. So if you're interested in this, maybe that's a good way to get involved. Also, there's some non-Pythonic things, but I won't get into that. But just like, you go as a Python expert. Okay, so writing your own add-on. Here's your typical add-on structure. It always starts with add-on.xml, which we'll talk about in a second. We also have the Python script, and then usually a directory of resources, so the icon, icons and sounds and whatever's in resources. You can also put Python files in resources. These all get bundled into a zip file, and then somewhere in the Kodi menu system, there's a way to install from zip files. So you can install that. There you go, but oh yeah, so you do that, and then you look in the Kodi, your Kodi directory, Kodi data add-ons, and now my cool plugin is there, along with other things that are installed, either by default. I also installed the YouTube plugin there, so it installed some other things, like the modules. Requests is there. You might be familiar with requests. All of these go into the add-ons directory. Okay, but rather than bundling everything up into a zip and installing it, and then you want to update, so then you don't have to do that. You can just symbolically link your source code into the Kodi add-ons directory. You get live updates essentially for free. Like everything just runs and it reevaluates your script. So definitely recommend doing that as you're developing. You will have to turn on unknown sources because there's some kind of signing procedure, but it's one toggle to switch to install your own code. Okay, add-on XML. So most of this is metadata. I'll highlight those. So this add-on thing, the ID is important. So the ID identifies yourself. Like that has to be unique in the span of Kodi add-ons to identify yourself. Plugin name is what is displayed on in the menu system. Provider name is just your name if you're publishing this, which I haven't done. I should probably say, like, I don't have any published packages right now. Everything is really just on my own machine, which is great. Don't have to worry about anything, so it's all just says your name. Let's see, and then, so here's the actual extension. So this is the important bit. And you can have multiple of them per add-on. And we'll zoom into this. So here's the extension bit, and you can learn more about this at the wiki, the add-on.xml on the wiki. But here's all the valid extension points. Like these are all the things that you can add to your add-on, all the extensions you can add to your add-on, and again, you can add multiple if you want. So for this one, it's a plugin source, as we said. So this is adding new media to the Kodi menu system. But we could also do libraries and scripts and stuff. We specify the library file, which I personally like addon.py because it keeps addon XML and addon.py like together in the file system. But other common ones are script.py, default.py. Sometimes they're in resources, especially if you have multiple, that you have one like as a script and one as a media source. You don't have to have one script to rule them all. And then specifically for plugin sources, we have this provides, which is space-separated types of media that you're showing. And that is to be displayed in the menu system. So this one's providing audio and video. That will go into the music and videos menus. Like if you go into them, you'll see this plugin. And it is video, not videos. And I lost a couple hours wondering why my thing wasn't installing and going crazy because I added an extra S. So check your logs when you're doing that. OK. I think we're finally ready to get to Python. How does that sound? So that addon.py that I just mentioned that your XML is referencing, it is run by Kodi and passed arguments based on, or like sourced from sys.argv. So Kodi will call it, passes in these specific functions, which I think is a little weird that it's not just like you define a main class or something that you're calling like a package resources does, but you know, what, this is 2002, I don't know what the system was, or the thought process was. So the plugin ID that I mentioned before, that's passed in as a URL as the first parameter. Oh, I think I have, yeah. So we have the base URL. We have an application handle, which is like the session, the process that's running this particular one. So when you interact with the XBMC functions, you'll usually pass an integer, that handle as an integer. And then a query string. So it's passed a URL query string. That's kind of strange, but it works, and it's keeping in with this like URL theme. And then there's this resume false, which is not in the wiki. I've never seen it be anything like the fourth parameter is just always resume false. I don't know what that's about, so I just ignore it, but just know it's there. It's probably not something to worry about, right? And so in their wiki, or like in their examples, they handle it, like just extract the values from argv. But old habits die hard, so I'm like, oh, I'll use argpars, and it's probably not a good idea in case like -h goes in and then it just crashes your system or something. But I like this, and note that like the query transform, like it'll automatically transform the query into the dictionary in your namespace. That seems better for testing or something. I don't know if you're passing like this namespace object around. So that's cool. Oh yeah. Oh, there's an example there. Taking, yeah. You get it. So you interact with Kodi via these libraries, and there's another source of documentation. Oh, I should say these libraries are all C++, so you don't get much access. You can't see Py files to explain what's going on. Like they're pretty opaque, but there's another documentation source, which is the Doxygen site, which will tell you all the options when doing stuff. And there's lots of options, there's lots of functionality. We're only going to look at a couple of these APIs. Let's see. All right, Folk Alley is my first example. Does anybody know Folk Alley? Has folkalley.com? Okay. It's a 24/7 folk music streaming platform, and it's a service of WKSU at Kent State University, just a short drive away from here. Yeah, all right. And then, oh, just WKSU. Oh, goes. Anyway, they have multiple streams, and I wanted to add them. Like that was my first project. I wanted to add these streams to Kodi, or like just get them playing on my TV, some other system that isn't, that I have control over, and just see if it works. All right. So finally, some code. So this is it. This is the whole thing. So there's the stream URL. Like you see the data block there. So I have the names of these items that will be in this menu system. There's the logos, like the ping files of the logos, and then the URLs, which are just HTTP to MP3 streams. And let's see, and as I've already mentioned, like this menu system, everything in Kodi is related to lists. So they have, when you enter a list, you're adding things, or when you enter a plugin, or a media source plugin, it will prompt you for, or you're supposed to fill up this list object, that there's a global list, and you're adding these directory items to this list, and that's the thing that is displayed in the UI. And it needs to be simple because you're just navigating these with a remote control typically. So the key point here is that, so we're creating this list item, which is just the title. That's the title I gave in the data, the first element of these tuples. And then I'm building this path. So one of the attributes of this item, which you have to call through setAttr into the C++, and you have to pass it the dict. You can't just say thumb equals this. It's, yeah, okay. So you're setting the art there, and then you add this list item to this directory, to the global directory of the thing that it's currently processing. And then at the end of the file, you have to say, I'm done adding things. Because it could also spawn other processes, like it's still Python, and anything can happen. And until it receives that signal that I'm done, then it will display everything. Cool. Oh, that was okay. I had more on the, right, so the things to be displayed are the list items. You should refer to the documentation. And the magic is the URL argument. So those URLs, I'm not doing anything with the URLs. I'm just specifying that when you select this list item, you're supposed to play this URL. And with the MP3 streams, and it just worked. Like this, where I didn't have to configure anything other than passing in MP3s to the thing. So yeah, there's that again. Okay, so great. It showed up, and now here's the list that I was talking about. When you load the app, there's the mainstream, and then there's the classic folk, and the fresh folk, and the Irish folk, and holiday folk, and it played. And I'm not going to do that because we don't have time, and I don't want to mess around with live demos. But just trust me that it just worked. The artist information and the track was all there, and I was really impressed that that's all it took. It didn't need to set up like stream handlers or something crazy. Okay, and then this is what my directory looks like. I have a make file in there for packaging the zip file, because why not? And then the resources are those PNG files. Cool. And then the next one is my next example is PyExplorer, which is going to switch away from the directory list things and just display dialogues. So this is a different architecture where we are prompting the user. We're not displaying media for playing, we're prompting the user for inputs. And you do that via these dialogues. We're not going to go through all the dialogues, we're just going to do a couple of simple ones. So okay there, actually, do I have? Right, this is too difficult, I don't want to do that. Okay, right, so we have okay and select and yes, no, and info, right, they're just dialogues that'll pop up. We'll see an example shortly. This is not a media, this is not the media source, this is just a script. So it provides an executable, and this is a little different because it's a different extension point. So no directory items, it's more like a normal Python script. So here's our example of the hello world dialogue. I have my args parsing up there, but we create this dialogue object and then call OK method on the dialogue, and then that prompts the user. You'll see this popping up, and then they can say OK, right? Like that's the OK method on the dialog. Everywhere seems to create new dialogues for prompting, but I have been successful just creating one dialog and calling different methods on it multiple times. I don't know if there's a best practice there or what the deal is. But okay, so here's my example that gets a little more a bit too complicated from what I was hoping, but I wanted a way to descend into the Python objects, and then we can probe them and see like what's going on with this Python environment. And I don't need to get too far into it, but do I have? Yeah, so we're starting with the OS and sys imports, and then we're looping through, grabbing the keys of the dir, right? Isn't there? It doesn't matter. The focus is on, well, I could come over here, I guess. So select, so we're saying explore Python with the keys in this stack. So we're descending into these Python objects, and then we can also pop out of them. So select OS and sys are the current values in the top of the stack. And then if we didn't select anything, it'll return a -1, and then so I'll just pop off the stack and then replay everything. Selected keys. Right, and then if otherwise we selected one of the keys, and you're given the index of the thing that so you have to look it up again, and then get the value from the selected key, and then, well, let's see what happens. When we select sys, we get all 77 attributes of sys. So there, we're selecting the next one. And then if we look at argv, we've now grabbed a list, which is one of these guys, so now it's calling this one, and it's building this title, so it'll be sys.argv, and see that it's only the script itself, the addon.py, it's not, right, it's not passing in those 4 arguments. So scripts are called as scripts versus the media sources, which have more elaborate passing. Okay, cool. And then, so my last one, I was going to do PyVideo. And if you don't know PyVideo, it's a repository of Python videos from all the conferences, including Pyohio and all the PyCons around the world. And I wanted to make this a Kodi plugin. And the maintainers were here last year. I don't know if they're here this year. But anyway, it's a big GitHub repository full of data. And I download that as a zip file. And then in a similar way, I'm walking through this zip file. And so displaying this, except this time I'm using directory items rather than like the dialog select thing. But so right, so great. We walk through the zip files and we find our thing, like find the Pyohio we want to watch, and then the YouTube plugin, because it's a YouTube, and then it's like, oh, my API keys don't work, so we can't do a live demo of that because it just stopped working one day. And that's a problem with this Kodi stuff, is that if the big players don't want you like using third-party stuff, like you're kind of SOL, so we need to get around that somehow. But the cool thing, and this is like the most important bit, so this is walking through, like iterating over the current directory in this zip file, like we extract the zip file, you know, is folder dir. So what happens, or what is the URL that you select in this directory item? Because you're not playing anything, you're just loading this directory. It's the args URL. Like when it passes it, like this is a thing to call yourself. Like go to this URL, and you can pass items via, like my zip path argument there is passed via this string. So that was kind of like, it's not really obvious how you solve these problems, but like what's the URL? And it's like, you're calling yourself. You can also call other plugins with this. I have 1 minute left. Hey, and we're already at the conclusion. So good job rushing. Let's see. So this talk is less about Python and more about like reclaiming agency over your devices. And I really want to encourage people to have more control over their equipment. And projects like Kodi will help with that. But the barrier to entry is still pretty high. One way you can contribute is documentation where you can, and I hope this talk is part of that effort. The 2 to 3 split is probably soured a bunch of people when your old Python 2 code stopped working and you didn't feel like moving it over, so there's probably a lot of low-hanging fruit of running 2 to 3 on stuff. And oh yeah, there's that. And then, again, this was only an introduction. There's a lot more you can do, and I need to stop. So thank you. Go out and build great things.